Pattaya City Expats Club is a non-profit social organisation and our speakers are volunteers. The club as such assumes no responsibility or liability for the professional reputation of or the quality of services provided by the speaker today.
Good morning, everybody. Sawadee Kap and Aloha. How many people from Hawaii? Got any Hawaiians here? A couple, okay. Well, that's where I lived for 30-some years before I came here. And now I am entering my 71st trip around the sun, which alone is amazing because when I started out way back, we had rock stars dying. If anybody remembered Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, they all died. And we all said the next one would be Keith Richards. How many remember that? Well, Keith is still with us. Well, we also had the pool of who was going to die first amongst us. Guess who won? Yeah, that would have been me. Everybody thought I was going to be dead by the time I'm 40, and now I'm 70, and some of those guys are dead, so we keep on keeping on. With that, I'm going to tell you, first of all, that I have available for sale in the back the books, Amazing Kedon, Amazing Thailand, and some of the shirts that I made for a store in Thailand. They're in the Thai sizes, so watch out when you go for that. They're usually average a size down from whatever you wear. With that, let's start with my first amazing escapade. And my first amazing escapade takes place. Where do I point this thing? Oh, okay. Well, there's the books right there, okay? And the next thing, anyone hear of Isla Vista, California? Anyone remember what went on there 50 years ago? Well, 50 years ago, and I lived there then, but I wasn't there that night, I swear, they burned to the ground a branch of the Bank of America. I mean, that made world-around headlines. This was when the Vietnam War was in full conflict, and people were going on about it, and there was a big riff, of course, going across the United States and all the college campuses. Well, I didn't participate in the burning of the bank, although I know some people that did, which I was invited to give up. When I tell you what was going on, you'll understand why. But if you fast forward when they burned the bank, 2 months later, they had another escapade in Isla Vista. And I happened to be involved in that because I was sort of the leader of a demonstration. I was standing up just like this. Somebody handed me a bullhorn, and that made me the most powerful person of the 5,000 that were in attendance. Well, the police came. 20 police came in full riot gear, and they marched through the crowd like this with their truncheons. And the crowd just let them walk until they got up right in front of me. And I'm looking at them, and they're looking at me, and I said, peace and love. It wasn't even about the Vietnam War. It was a demonstration about a professor who had been denied tenure, and he was one of our favorite professors, but he was politically to the left. The administration didn't like that, so they denied him tenure. We were mad. Well, Mr. Allen, his name was, Bill Allen, was feted by us, and we had the police in attendance in honor. And I said to the police guys after a while, I said, look around you. And they looked around. I said, there's 5,000 people, and there's 20 of you. What do you think of those odds? Well, they didn't think much of them. I said, you know what? We'll let you leave if you want to. We won't touch you. They did. So that morphed into a riot, unfortunately, that night in Isla Vista. And during that riot, somebody threw a firebomb or a Molotov cocktail at what was the temporary rebuilding of the bank. And this one kid, doing his duty, picked it up and threw it back. What he got for his trouble was a bullet. He was killed by the National Guard. Well, now Isla Vista was in a big problem. There was going to be a big riot the next night, and we knew it. My friend and I lived, if you'd live at the top of that loop where number 3 is, my apartment was right the next street over, and I could see everything that was going on there. The police congregated there after curfew, and there was a curfew. If you were out after it, you're going to be arrested. Well, what we decided to do that night was, first we were going to blow something up because we were really mad, and then we realized that would probably get us into trouble. So we decided to not blow anything up, but we sort of liked the idea. So what we did was we constructed a facsimile of a timed firebomb. And our little, what we called urban sculpture, was placed in a Dipsy dumpster right in that head of that loop, which is where the police were ensconced during their occupation of the town. And we looked at that dumpster and we said, well, we could put this thing in there. It had a ticking clock. Tick, 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 tick. You could hear it. We figured they'd see it. They'd freak out. They did. We called the fire department. Fire department came and pulled the Dipsy dumpster out in the middle of the street, filled it with water, called the bomb squad from Port Hueneme, but it stopped the riot. There was no riot that night. Nobody hurt, no buildings burned. Well, this went on till later at night, and we knew that we were going to be in trouble. We knew that they had been informed that we did this. So sure enough, about midnight, here comes the police. They knock on our door, and they are mad. Did you guys do this? I didn't have anything to do with it. I don't know anything about it. Talked to my lawyer. They took us to jail. We were in jail for, well, first of all, they set our bail at $12,000. To give you an idea, at that time, a murderer in Santa Barbara County Jail paid a $1,500 bail. So we had the highest bail in the history of the jail. We're sitting there. We were heroes in the jail because everybody was in there was for rioting, $50 bail, whatever. There we were, 5 felony charges against us for our prank, which is all it really was. So we eventually bailed out. We got our friends to put up our bail, and we were bound over for the preliminary hearing. And this became interesting because we had I had a terrific lawyer. I mean, my father was a lawyer, but he wasn't a criminal lawyer. He hired a defense lawyer who was really, really good. And this guy knew his stuff. He knew enough to figure out the answers to the questions he'd ask before he asked them. So what happened was, first of all, they put our roommate on the stand and asked him, on the day of April 20th, 1970, did you observe your roommates making a bomb? Objection, my lawyer said. There's no evidence that there was a bomb made. Sustained. Another question about making a bomb. Objection sustained. Finally, they asked him, on the day of April 20th, 1970, did you observe anything unusual going on in your apartment? And my roommate, twisting his little mustache, says, well, I guess that depends on what you mean by unusual. Big laughter in the courtroom, including me. My lawyer got mad at me for doing that. Then they put on their star witness, a demolition expert. And my lawyer knew exactly what to ask him. Well, what does it take to make a bomb? Well, you got to have a this, you got to have a that, you got to have a that, and you got to have a fuse. And my lawyer said, did you have a fuse? Because he knew they didn't. No. So could you make a bomb with what's there? No, you couldn't. Your Honor, we moved for dismissal. It was dismissed. We walked. The police were horrified and angry at us. They threatened to arrest us for planting firecrackers because there was firecrackers attached to the thing until they were till they heard that possession of firecrackers in Isla Vista wasn't illegal, so we walked away from the whole thing. That was the first outrage. After that, we will move forward. Moving along. Me and the guy that did the bomb with me, the non-bomb, sailed a boat very much like that to Hawaii. And the one thing about that is we didn't know how to navigate when we left. We learned on the way, hoping that we would learn. We did, and we got there. So I got into sailing. That was going to be my career. What did I do? Oh, that was my boat. I got it from my parents, and the guy that bailed me out took it to Hawaii with the idea of selling it, which I finally did, but it took 3 years, so nobody was happy about that, including me. But I did single-hand that boat from Maui to Oahu, which I'd never done before, and that involves sailing overnight in some of the roughest water in the world, the Molokai Channel. Well, after that, I had an opportunity to be paid to drive that. It wasn't exactly that, but it looks like that. Single screw fishing trawler from Astoria, Oregon to Kona in the middle of hurricane season. Well, I told the guy that owned the boat, look, we need to bring a mechanic. We could have a problem, we've got one engine. He said, okay, so I hired my friend to be the mechanic. The last minute, he decides not to go. Okay, we don't have a mechanic, but we gotta go. Well, we took off. We went through a full hurricane. We just waited at the dock, waited it out, and decided to hug the coast and go down to Monterey before we started back across. We broke down 600 miles from Hilo because one of the pumps went out that pumped the water that cooled the water that cooled the engine. And I took the pump apart after I figured out what was the problem, found out that we couldn't fix it. And I said, and we'd been there already for like 12 hours, just flopping around in the ocean, getting seasick. And I leaned back like this in sheer frustration, hit my head on something. I turned around and looked. It was the identical pump that was used to wash the deck. They said, can't we use that one? Can we plug into that and use that to do our water? Yeah, we can. We did. And we put the very last ounce of our fresh water into the cooling system. Now we had no water for a 4-day trip to Hilo. But we did have 9 beers. And those beers were our only hydration for the rest of the trip. So we twice a day split a beer, and that was what we had to drink. Well, we were pretty well wrung out by the time we got to Kona. When we did, our cohort on land brought us a case of beer that disappeared real quick. And that also convinced me that, what did I do? That probably running boats back and forth to the United States was not going to be my life. But I did like doing this. The reason why I'm including this is Sunset Beach. That was my first real near-death experience. So I was out on a fairly big day there, first time I'd been in the water in 7 weeks, and I went over a wave, did not push my surfboard through the wave like you're supposed to do, like I would have done. But so I ended up going down the face of that wave, and the board hitting me, knocking me out, breaking my eardrum, and driving me to the bottom of the ocean, where I came to without a breath of air, and it's pitch dark. And I go, this time you're not going to make this one, kid. You are dead. And I sat there and I go, what a waste. You're only 23 years old, man. And I was just about ready to just suck in the water and say, see you later. I see light about 10 feet above my head. And the washing machine effect of the wave had pretty much gone away. Scratched like heck, got to the surface, got one breath of air. Another wave hit me, took me all the way to the bottom. But I had air, I knew I was going to make it. After one other wave, I got up to the surface. There's no waves between the set. Now I need my surfboard. because I'm quarter mile from the shore. There's no way I was going to swim in then. I was beat. And this kid paddles over to me. He says, "Is this your board?" "Yeah." "Have at it, brother." I said, "Thank you." I climbed aboard and almost passed out, but it took me a half hour to get the quarter mile into shore. That was basically the last of my big surfing career, because I started this. Brown Sugar was the world's first women's surfwear line, and it was quite popular within the construct of nobody was buying women's surfwear. No surf shops would, because they said, "Look, if we buy women's wear, we won't sell any more men, so we can't buy it." Only the Japanese bought it. That was our t-shirt. It was one of the most coveted t-shirts in Hawaii because we could not sell it. No store would carry it because of the naked girl, but the Japanese loved it. And we started shipping most of our merchandise to Japan. We did really well there, and it floated the company for a while, but unfortunately, particularly in the women's end of the apparel business, everything that goes up must come down, and we did. So after that, I put Brown Sugar on the table, and I got together with a person. This person, that's Debbie. She was my partner. We decided that what we would do was a television business. We were going to make a TV show. And we were going to make a show. It was called Water Hawaii. It was about everything about the water in Hawaii. So, but what we decided was we needed to get some notoriety. So we put together this World Aloha tour, in which we took, well, that's me, we took these people, 17 musicians and dancers from Hawaii, and toured the entire Soviet Union giving concerts. Now, if there was ever something that deserved not to happen, it was this, because we had every disaster you could have happen, but we persevered. The slogan of World Aloha Tour was, "One disaster after another catastrophe, but we persevered." And they ended up making the TV show, 4 segments of a thing called the Hawaiian Moving Company, and I was absolutely convinced that there was no way I was going to get into the TV business, because the knives in that business are long and sharp, and I got a few stuck in me before that thing was over. Well, from that, I did this. Kamehameha Garment Company was the oldest garment company in Hawaii. And I happened to meet the person that was running it when I started Brown Sugar. I was the newest company, they were the oldest. They wanted to have a fashion show, and I was to be the MC of that show. I mean, how green I was in this business. I'd never made any garments before, except for my sample line that we showed at the fashion show. But I was in front of all the major women in the Hawaiian fashion industry doing my little thing. Well, from that, I became friends with Vi Farrell that was running Kamehameha. And if you fast forward, after the World Aloha Tour and other things, I got the idea that the Hawaiian silky, these things, was going to be popular again. You know, they had originally started in 1936. The Kamehameha Garment Company made them. I decided to make them again. So I called Vi. I said, "What about using Kamehameha's label? We'll pay money for a license." "Well, I don't know about that. I don't work there anymore. I think they're going to dissolve the company. Call this guy." Well, I called this guy. This guy's name was Tom Roca. I said, "Hey, Tom, I'd like to license Kamehameha." He said, "We can't do that. We're going to dissolve it." I said, "You're going to dissolve Hawaii's oldest garment company?" "Yeah." I said, "Well, why don't you sell it to me?" "We can't do that. We're dissolving it." And I'm like frustrated now. "Why don't you give it to me?" "I guess we could do that." "Could you write a letter to that effect?" "Yeah." I still have that letter. He sends it to me. I go down and take 25 of the $80 I had in the bank. registered the Kamehameha Garment Company, and it got published in the newspaper. Every apparel person in Honolulu noticed this. One of them called me up and said, Brad, I understand you have Kamehameha now. Yes. This guy made silky Aloha shirts in China out of silk. He says, I will buy the label from you. Really? How much? I'll give you $50,000 for it right now. And I'm like, now I got my $80 less 25 in the bank. And I said, John, you really want to give me $50,000? Yeah, I do. It'd be worth it to me. I said, you know what? I think it'll be worth it to me. I'm not going to do it. I didn't. But once I was right, Kamehameha got really big under me in the 1990s. We ran it from our first year, we did $50,000 in business. By year two, Y2K, we were doing $2 million a year. And just a second. Oh. In 2001, Forbes magazine named us one of America's 50 finest products and put out this issue. So I was pretty stoked. I was pretty full of myself. In 2000, we went to a show called the Magic Show. The Magic Show is called the Men's Apparel Guild in California. Of course, it's held in Las Vegas, Nevada, but who counts? In that 4-day show, we wrote $500,000 worth of business. And I was just over the moon. I could not believe that we were doing that good. Neither could anybody else, including the guy that had the booth behind me. And he came up to me, he said, you're doing a fantastic job. I said, well, thank you. I mean, I knew who this guy was. He had a $39 million a year dress line. He says, I want to buy the company. You want to buy my company? He says, yeah, I'll give you $2 million for it. Do you know how many times I have said to myself how stupid I was for not taking that $2 million and running away? Because I didn't. I figured we were going to be one more year, we were going to be worth $5 million. Well, you know what happened a year later? Year 2001, the Magic Show, the beginning of September, the show we did $2 million to $500,000 at the year before, $50,000. I'm like, I can't believe this. Every wave must break, and that one did. I get back to my home in Honolulu. I gather my group together, and I said, guys, I don't see how it can get any worse. That was on September the 10th, 2001. Does anyone remember what happened on September the 11th? Yeah, I think you remember. Few airplanes driven into a few buildings changed everything, and nobody wanted to wear a shirt that looked like that. Our business stopped. We barely survived. I kept it together, but I knew that we were on the way out. Our sales dropped down to 200,000 5 years later. I finally decided to close the company and move here. And that's what I did. And during that time, how am I doing on time? What? Okay, because I forgot to put the timer on. Perfect me. Anyway, I started going to Indonesia, and I met this girl in Indonesia. That's our tag that we use now. That's our new folder flyer. But in 1996, I went to Indonesia and I met that girl right there. Her name is Annie. Annie's a trip. By mutual, Jerry hates Annie. Annie was, well, we ended up getting, we took one of these cars here, a Jimmy, drove it to Surabaya to get her a visa, crashed into a guy on a motorbike. I thought I killed him. I mean, actually, I did a Yui. He hit me. And I thought I was going to Indonesian jail. But Annie talked me out of it, talked the police, talked the Puyai Ban, the Thai equivalent there, out of me going to jail. I offered him $100. They ended up taking $40. So we got away with it. And eventually got married. Now, if there is ever a marriage that I 100% knew wasn't going to work, I did it anyway. But because one thing, I had to convert to Islam. I had to become a Muslim for a day. They have queen for a day and king for a day. Well, I was Muslim for a day to marry Annie. And we did the marriage. I put the marriage papers in my pocket, never signed them, and never turned them in and that turned out that it was lucky. Because I, with Annie, met the people that were involved with the filming of this movie, Wind Talkers. That was John Woo, the director. That's Nicolas Cage. And they were shooting the movie when we were doing the Kenwood Cup. Annie was one of my salespeople, in fact, the best one. And he was a great salesperson. But the assistant prop master falls for Annie. And by this time, me and her were separated completely. I said, Annie, you're not going out with anybody unless I meet him first. So she had to vet all her boyfriends with me. And so she meets this guy, Chris. Chris is a great guy. I said, okay, you can go out with him. Surely enough, soon enough, Chris and Annie decide they're going to get married. And they do. And you know who walked Annie down the aisle and gave her away? That would be me. Do you know anybody that's ever walked their wife down the aisle and given her away to her ex-husband? Well, you do now. Anyway, we're coming to the final of this story. This is kind of the most dramatic part. It takes place at this place, Maharat Hospital in Kolat. I finally came into some money in around 2015. And I went to Bangkok Heart and did a rundown. I knew I was going to have heart problems. I already had 2 stents. So they said, yes, you've got a blockage. You've got to go to the cath lab. And it just so happens that Maharat has one of the best ones in Thailand. It's a government hospital, but they use private physicians. I mean, my doctor worked at Bangkok Heart as well as Maharat. I get scheduled for the operation. They can't do it because they don't have any of my blood. So they had to collect my blood. It took 3 more months. But in March of 2016, and I had impressed my by then banished wife into service as my caregiver, because you can't, as a Farang, get an operation in a Thai hospital without a Thai caregiver to communicate and to do all the things that they're insufficiently staffed to do. So Nung, my wife, Jerry knows Nung. That becomes critical to my survival, that relationship. Because while my operation went swimmingly, what happened thereafter was not so good. Because the guy in the next bed to me, who would die, had a strain of pneumonia that they considered to be incurable and always fatal. Well, the nurses at Maharat Hospital don't scrub. They don't have the time. So all they do is wash their hands with that stuff we use for COVID now, the same stuff. They would wash their hands. They didn't wear gloves. Well, she didn't wash her hands quite good enough and communicated that pneumonia strain to me. Now I had a fatal, always fatal, incurable strain of pneumonia. My doctor, Nisa, goes to my wife, Nung, who could have easily said, yeah, sure, do it. He wants to pull the life support. And to my everlasting mystification, she said, no, don't. I mean, she wasn't really my biggest fan at the time, okay? So it was really surprising. She says, no. She calls Jerry Weinerth, the only friend of mine she knows, says, Jerry, you have to come to Kolat to come to the hospital. Brad is going to die. And Jerry says, okay, I'll come tomorrow. She says, no, you have to come now. Jerry's on a bus within 2 hours. Gets there, and, well, does anyone know how tall and big Jerry is? Stand up, Jerry. Yeah, well, my doctor didn't come to his chin. He's about 5'6", Thai guy, 140 pounds. Jerry says, you're not pulling the life support. Okay. They didn't pull it, but then they thought I was still going to die. Then Jerry gets on my daughter's Facebook account. He implores everybody that knows me to just do whatever they can. Well, that message got to my friend Lenny, who was involved in one of my other exploits where I almost bought the farm. But Lenny got that message at 6 a.m., calls my sister by 6:30. She says, we got to do something. We're going to send Lisa. Lisa's my oldest daughter, to Thailand. She's going to get on a plane. She got on a plane by 3 o'clock that day and flew to Thailand to hook up with me. And I meet her boyfriend then. It was really a great meeting because the first thing I asked him was, is Bernie okay? Let's see if we got Bernie up here. Well, that was me after the operation. Oh, I don't have it. I don't. Oh dear. I have chewed the... How did I do this? Oh well. You didn't get to see the operation. Try and get me back to my pictures. I thought I had a thing that I had written that said I want to see Bernie Sanders nominated. The reason why I wanted to show it was because that was the only way I could communicate. Before that, I had a thing in my mouth, and I had to have it in there all the time, so I couldn't talk, and that was one of the most frustrating things about it. To give you an idea, when I did the operation, they said that I was going to be in the operation for 1 day. I'd be 3 days in the CCU, cardiac care unit, 7 days in recovery, and gone. I was in the cardiac care unit for 32 days. What happened was Jerry's message got out, and my friends Tim and Charity, who had been in Thailand, we were visiting together in Kanchanaburi, saw it. They called my sister Terry, who proceeded to browbeat Charity. Charity swears she'll never talk to my sister again. But she succeeded in getting Tim and Charity to come to Kolat, okay? Why is this important? Tim is a cardiac nurse, okay? He knew. He gets to Kolat and converses with my doctor and said, look, what's going on here? Well, he's got this strain of pneumonia. We don't know how to cure it. It's always fatal. He says, we do. Really? Yeah, go to this place. Get this. It'll solve your problem. Well, you know what this place was? Has anyone ever heard of Barry Bonds? Barry Bonds, home run hitter, okay? Well, Barry Bonds was on steroids. There was a place called Bay Area Laboratory Company that made those steroids. They also made the drug that cured me. So I got a real fond place in my heart for Barry Bonds and the steroid company that made them. But I responded. I started to come back. People were coming over. My sister came over to encourage me because I was basically of a mind that I wasn't going to really recover, that I was going to be an invalid, all this. She said, no, you got to do this. You'll be all right. I said, okay, I'm going to. Well, one thing that was coming very apparent was that I was using a lot of morphine. They were giving me about 40 milligrams a day, which is as much as a typical junkie uses when they're strung out. Now, whatever reason, I didn't really get addicted to it, but I did like it. But they thought that they would try something on me because they thought I was using too much morphine, so they gave me fentanyl. Has anyone heard of fentanyl? Fentanyl is also an opiate, 7 times stronger than morphine. They gave me some. It killed me. I mean, just like that, within seconds, I knew that I was going to die. I did. Lights out, flatline, blue warning. Here they come with the ephedrine and the chest paddles. They put those on me and brought me back to life. I'm going like, I guess I'm hard to kill. But there was one other close to death experience, because I was so tired of having that thing in my mouth that I couldn't talk. They said, okay, we're going to do a tracheotomy. And they drill a hole here and put a tube down your throat, so at least you have your free mouth, but you still can't talk. So, and I really like to talk. You might notice that. But, okay, now, has anyone had a cabbage in here? Has anyone had a coronary arterial bypass graft? Heart bypass? Okay. You know, one of the things they do is called suction clear airway. Your lungs build up a tremendous amount of phlegm from having been jostled and messed with when they crack open your chest, which they do. So they break all your ribs, essentially. Well, one of the things that hurts when you do that is to cough. That's what you have to do to clear airway. So I decided the next time they told me to do it, after they did the tracheotomy, that I was really going to go for it. I was really going to cough it all out. So I did. And boy, did it come out. Only it wasn't what it was supposed to come out. It was my blood. I'd ripped out the stitches, and all my blood was going out. And the nurse said to me, I understood it. She goes, you're going to bleed out. I've got to sit on you. It was 2:30 in the morning. So they called the doctor, and she gets up and sits on me. And I'm like this close to her. I can see all the way to Mother. I'm sure glad you're wearing panties. But she did it. She did the right thing. The doctor got there in a half hour and stitched me up. Well, the rest of it is just add infinitum. Another week or so in the CCU, I was allowed to go to the recovery room. And even there, I was there for 2 weeks. I was only supposed to be there for a week. But on the 10th of May, 2016, they came to me and said, you want to go home? Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. I went back to Kedon, and everyone in the village came to my house. And I had about 200 of these things on each wrist. It was really nice to be home. That's my talk, folks. You got any questions? I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, buy a shirt.
Hi, very interesting. Enjoyed it very much.
Thank you.
One question. How did you cover your medical expenses? It must have been astronomical what you went through.
Well, I had money. I had come into some money, but it ended up, I thought it was going to cost 250,000 baht. It ended up costing nearly $1 million. So that really depleted the money that I was going to use to start up Kamehameha, but I was able to get it started. It just took a lot longer. But yeah, it was nearly $1 million baht by the time all that done. In the United States, it would have been north of $500,000. So in that respect, I was really happy to be in Thailand.
This is a question regarding the quality of your shirts. Your Forbes advertisement in 2001 had a picture of the shirt that looks exactly like the one you're wearing. So is that shirt you're wearing actually 20 years old?
This one is, yeah. This one was made in the 90s. These are new. They're the ones I have. But yeah, the shirts last. In fact, if you are lucky enough to get a Kamehameha that was made in the 30s or early 40s, they can collect as much as $5,000 from a collector. So.
No, Brad, only not a question, but a comment. As you were talking about your experiences in the hospital, and I had bypass surgery, and in my case, of course, what you say about coughing is absolutely correct. And I had this pillow that I could hold at my chest which helped reduce the pain. And one of my visitors while I was there picked up the pillow and started moving, and I says, if you take that pillow away, I'm going to kill you. And as to the ventilator going down your throat, I didn't experience that, although I did, back to the heart bit, although they did the bypass, it failed. I had something called Dressler syndrome. It wasn't fluid in the lungs, it was fluid around the heart. So anyway, that's my story, but I did have the ventilator when I was my last hospital extended stay, 5+ weeks here in Bangkok, Pattaya, but that was a lung infection. And I will tell you this, they did it twice, and forget it, I do not like that thing, especially when the nurses came and said, time to clean your mouth.
Oh, God.
Yes, they stick something down your throat, and it gets down there, and you, oh, never mind, but believe me, you don't want it.
Suction clear airways, big fun. When I had that ventilator in my mouth, morphine, one thing it does is make you dream. And the dreams aren't dreams as far as you're concerned. They're real. In fact, when I met my daughter's boyfriend, the first thing I said to him was, is Bernie okay? He goes, what do you mean? I just saved Bernie Sanders from assassination. I kicked the gun out of the assassin's hand. I'm saying this. I believe it. He says, no, you kicked your nurse. Who forgave me. She understood it. But about the respirator, I had that thing in my mouth all the time. When I was down dreaming on morphine, I thought wax flowers were growing out of my mouth. So I kept trying to pull it out to the point where they finally lashed my wrists to the bed and I couldn't get at it. But they finally said, we're going to do a tracheotomy because you're just hard to control. But they did, and well, it worked out.
I don't think it actually came out, but the name of the talk was The 10 Most Outrageous Things I've Done in My Life, right? And that, did we get all 10, or we got 6 of the 10 or something?
Well, I don't really know, because I mean, I felt like the operation was half of them. But, you know, I mean, if you count every little thing that went on, yeah, I suppose we hit 10 of them.
I want to say, this was my idea for a subject for a talk, 10 Outrageous Things I've Done in My Life. And it actually came from a conversation with Ray Woods, who gave a talk on the 15 most difficult places in the world he's ever been to. And I said, and he showed me this photo. I'm not going to tell you the photo, but it was extremely outrageous photo that involved him not wearing really much in the way of clothing. And I said, why don't you give a talk on the 15 most outrageous things I've done in my world travel, right? And I shared that with Brad, which then became the 10 most outrageous things I've done in my life. But you're going to give that talk, aren't you, Ray? 15
Yes.
most outrageous things I've done in my world travels. You want to see this photo. It is something. Won't be appearing in Pattaya Mail, I wouldn't think. So this is actually a really good way to structure some autobiographical thing if you've done outrageous things. So if anybody's had an outrageous experience, why is Les looking at me intently? He's thinking of the outrageous things he's done in his life. It might be interesting for Jerry. Do you want to say a few words about what it was like when you were called to rescue this man? No. Okay, good.
While you're getting up, I just want to say that Ray Woods is the only person I know that's been to every single country on planet Earth. I've never met anybody that's done that. 196, is that correct, Ray? Yeah, 190. Yes, he is a Kedonite. He's been there more than once. Jerry's been there. Ren just came back from there. And Rose. Ren and Rose. The Ren and Rose Road Show.
So, going to the hospital to see Brad, he had asked me to come in 3 days when he was finished with ICU and everything was okay. You heard the story about Nung, his wife, telling me to get on get up here right now. I did. What I found, what you didn't mention, was that the doctor said that you had given up a will to live, that you thought you were going to die, and that if you wanted to live, you had to fight. You had to fight to live, or you weren't going to make it. And what I did, I took a regular 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and I wrote, "I want to live," signed Brad Walker. Put it on a clipboard. His wife, his daughter, myself, and other people that came to visit wrote little notes on there like, "I love you, go for it, Brad, you'll make it," and all that stuff. And we took that, the nurses took that and put it like up right behind his head and hung it up with all the IVs and everything else. And that was there for weeks.
I took it home with me and lost it. I mean,
Yeah,
it was really
I've been trying to find
well.
a
Yeah.
picture of it too, but I want to live, and that was the thing. And, you know, that was the whole theme, to get him to want to live again, because
Well, what I thought was that I was going to come back a permanent invalid, and I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Actually, my sister, who came later, she came to me and she says, "Why are you like this? This is not you." I said, "Look, I don't want to live with the drool bucket hanging off my ear. You know, I don't want to be on renal dialysis all the time." "You're not going to be. If you fight, you'll live." Well, that was when I decided to really go for it and blow out my stitches on my tracheotomy. But yes, that was a big deal when Jerry did that. "I want to live." I remember that. I thought I took the sign with me, and evidently it disappeared with
Yeah,
some
well,
other stuff.
we've got it here.
Yeah, that's it.
Another thing too, the relationship that he had with his wife Nung and his daughter. When Brad asked Nung to be his caregiver, the first thing she said was, "How much are you going to pay me?" Okay? This is the nature of their relationship, the way they had it. They're living in the same house, not really together as a married couple, but still legally married.
She wasn't living there then. I kicked her
No,
out.
yeah, you kicked her out, yeah.
She came back
at
to
that
do
point.
this.
She came back to be your primary caregiver in the hospital. So anyway, you know, Brad's treating her not the greatest, is normally is going on. And I'm telling him, I said, "Brad, she loves you." Nah, she doesn't love me. She's just, you know, no.
But she's still there.
She loves you. She loves you, and she does. They're back in the house together. They're living as great friends. You know, you got along really good with her, I heard, when you were up there.
Rose and Nung
She's a
are
great
buddies.
lady. Yeah, she's a great, you know, Nung is a great lady, and she loves you. You know, and you're still together, and it's amazing, you know. But that came out of the hospital experience and, you know, her supporting you. You know, she really loves you, so that's great.
Thank you for that.
I think it's a normal Western marriage now, right? You
Yeah,
live in
about
the
like that.
you live in the same place and you don't have sex, right? So
We go elsewhere. We come to patio. Well, if that's all, I really appreciate you guys' time and attention. It's always great to speak to PCEC. And buy a shirt, man. 1,000 baht. These are regularly 3,500 baht at Central Festival. What a Christmas gift for somebody you love.
and you can buy bigger versions of the shirt online because these are too small for most of the guys here. Also, if you haven't read one of both of Brad's books, Amazing Thailand and Amazing Kedon Village, you really should read them. There's only 300 and 500 baht. So, and of course you'll get personally signed by the author.
Personally, so. And I'm happy to do that. Anyway, thank you very much, folks. You're always great here.
Okay, Brad, before you disappear, give you a little certificate of appreciation. Thank you very much for your talk. And I will second Ren's comments about the book. So 2 great reads. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Cover up another damp patch on the wall. collecting them.